Hello and welcome back to the third part of Firebase Flutter notification series. In this video we are going to see how to receive Flutter Firebase notifications and how to ask for the permissions for the notifications. As we know that there are the new policy in the new iOS and the Android versions that user must accept the or user must agree to the consent that whether he wants to receive notifications for the particular app or not, right? So let's get started. So first of all, open the notification services, the class that we have created, and in this the first step is to ask for the permission when app is loaded. So basically these permissions will be asked for first one time only, and later on if user select yes or no, that can be changed from the app setting, not app setting, from the mobile setting. Okay, so to get started, we'll create a new function. That functions would be void request notification permissions. Okay, so in these functions what we'll do, we'll check whether the platform is iOS or Android. On the basis of that we'll request the permissions for the notification. So first we'll check for the iOS. If so here we have to import this class. Okay, now we can check, we can write code specific for the iOS. So starting from that, await, we'll use the messaging instance that we have already initialized for these. So when dot request permissions, so basically in this there are the different, first we can assign this function as async. Okay, so there are the different permission parameter for the iOS. So it can be whether we want to set alert for this notification or not. Then there is announcement, then batch should be displayed or not. So if you remember that when we receive a notification in iOS, then it shows the batch on the app icon. So these settings can be changed from here. And if someone is using CarPlay, then notifications should be displayed in the CarPlay or not. Then whether it is a critical alert, then provisional, and the last one would be a sound. So a sound should be played or not. So make sure that this call will be happen only when app is running in the iOS platform. And we have to check this because I have faced the multiple issues if I do not add the iOS tag before asking for the permissions, because it does not show the pop-up in their mobile applications to access the to request the permissions, and the notifications was not displayed properly, and only it was displayed in the notification center only. Then the next is we can use the, once we complete our check whether it's us or not, then we can use the notification settings class. So it is a notification settings, then again await, then again we'll use the messaging instance, then request permissions. So this is the similar to the parameters that we pass for the iOS, but this time it is for the Android, right? So we can copy this and paste it here. Now next is if. Here we'll see if settings, uh, if set it is in the authorization stations. The authorization stations belongs to the particular iOS or Android device operating system. So if it is already enabled in the mobile settings, then it will only show that user has already granted the permissions. So from these conditions we can check whether the user has already granted the permissions or not, right? If the permissions is already enabled for these applications or not. So to check that, we can use the notification settings that the instance we have created dot authorization status is equal to authorization status dot authorized. So if it is authorized, we can print here that user has already granted permissions. So user has already granted permissions, right? Let's see what's the here. Conditions must be a bool. Okay, so it should be a double equals to and the semicolon. Now in the next we'll see else if from the notification settings that authorization status is equals to authorization status dot provisional. That means the user granted provisional permissions. So that means user has granted provisional permissions. So again we can print here something that user has already granted provisional permissions. And the last is else. In this case, if user has not granted anything, then we can write user has denied permission. So here are the two options. The first option is, if you remember, then we get three options when any applications ask for the permissions. The first is uh, allow access, that for the permanent access, then for the time being only, and the third that decline the. So these three conditions are represent the same things. Okay, so we have written the code to ask for the permissions, right? Now we can test this one. The first of all, we have to include this code while app get started. So what we can do, in the you can write this code in your home screen in the init state, where let's say notification services dot request for the permissions. So whenever this home screen will be loaded in the applications, first it will ask for the permissions, and if the permission is properly set, accordingly will have will have this message in the uh, debug console. So let's test this one. So let me start one emulator. Okay, our emulator is started. Now we can run this app in the emulator. Okay, there, here we go, our app has been loaded, and it may take a few moments before loading its main screen. Okay, so if you see, when our app loaded the home screen, now it is asking the user to send you notification. So depends whether if user clicks on allow, then it will fire our first code that user has already granted the permissions, and if don't allow, then it will go to that particular portions when we have handled that okay, user has denied the access to the notifications. So here we can click allow, and if user clicks on the don't allow, then later on the user can go to the mobile setting and enable the notifications if needed. So if you see that when we clicked on allow, here we have the notification sorry logs in the console that user is already granted the permissions. So okay, so the same thing will be work for the iOS also. So here in this case I will not run the iOS simulator, because similarly in for the iOS it will ask for the permissions, and user can grant or permissions or not on the basis of the requirements, right? Okay, so now what we can do, we can write the logic to receive the foreground notifications, and then we'll write a logic to handle the notifications. So again, come back to your notification services class, and there here we have to write one logic for the foreground notifications. Okay, so use the future abstract interface there and write the foreground message, and again it is a sync function, and there here as a sync we can start it with the await, then Firebase messaging dot instance, then again use the dot to set foreground notification presentation options, right? So what it will do, it will set the notification presentation options when user is in the foreground. That means user has already opened the notification, and in that case when user receives the notifications, how that notification should be displayed to the user. Okay, so the options are, it should be alert, then set it to true, then the bell should be displayed, and the last one is it should play the sound, right? So now we are all set to receive the foreground notification. So we need to call these functions from the home screen. So again in the home screen, after accessing the notification permission, we can write this, or we can call these functions. So make sure that first we ask for the permissions, then we handle the logic for the foreground notification or foreground message, and before getting the new device token, always try to run the token is refresh or not. So if there is a new token is assigned and the previous token is expire, so it will be assign a new new device token, and then we are getting the new device token here. Okay, now okay, so we are done with the foreground notification. Then our next step is to initialize the Firebase instance. Right, void, then here we'll initialize the Firebase init function. The functions takes the context of the application, so it is a build context, and here we can write context. Now when, here the real logic we have to apply. So this logic says when we receive a message, so in this case the Firebase will continuously listening to the notifications, and when it listens to the on message events, that we are going to write that Firebase messaging dot on message, when the message will be received, it will listen to that message. So here event is nothing but the message that we receive, right? And you can write semicolon, then you can write enter here. Okay, so when we receive the message, then we have to initiate the two instances. The first one is the remote message instance, sorry, remote notification instance, right? Because it can be a null or empty, so better to write the question mark, that you already know about how that can be handled in the Flutter. Then it is a notifications, and then message, and the instance that we have, sorry, the event that we receive, message dot notification. And another one is, it is Android notifications. Again this can be empty, because if the notification is for the iOS, then we'll have empty for this Android one, so it is for the Android. Then again same thing, message dot notifications, then again this can be empty, and it is Android, right? So what we are here doing, First we are receiving the notifications for the iOS and also for the Android. So if message is for the iOS, then we'll have something in these notifications, and if there is a notification for the Android operating system, then we have message for the Android one. So basically it is kind of the typecasting, that this would be inside the message notification in Android, and this notification would be message dot only notifications. Okay, now what we can do here, sorry, we can print the whatever data that we are receiving from the notifications. So let's say we can write it is a notification, a title, then we can write it as notification dot, better to write exclamation mark if it is empty or null, then it should not throw any error. So we can display a title as this way, then again we can display a notifications dot body, then we can print the data here, that is a message dot data, then toString. Okay, so what here we can do, we can test this by sending we can test this to send the notifications. So in this case, first we have to copy our device token, because each device has its unique token ID. So here what we can do, we can open the Firebase console, and from the Firebase console we can send notifications, right? So let me open Firebase console here and go to a Firebase console. Okay, after logging to your Firebase, go to the project that we have already created in the previous part, then click on go to engage, and under the engage there is a messaging. Now and click on your create your first campaign, and it is a Firebase notification message. Okay, so what we can do, test in the note, we can write the test from Firebase console. Right here we do not need to enter any images and all. Test message, and here we have to add the FCM registration token. So FCM registration token is nothing but the device token that we have fetch in the home screen using the get device token method. So you can copy that token and you can add the token here and click on plus icon. So now that token is added, so what Firebase here it will do, if our all configuration are well and good, then when we click on test, the Firebase will send this test message to the particular device token, and our device token is connected with the applications that we have run in the emulator. Okay, so when I click this and when I click on test, then we should receive something here. Okay, so we are getting, okay, so we are getting one line that broadcast receive for a message, but actually we didn't receive anything because this line of code is not executed at all. Okay, so I got it. We have written this function, but we have not called these functions from our home screen. So what we have to do, we have to call these functions from our home screen, then only it will be able to send the message, right? So come back to the home screen, then you can write initialize this Firebase init, and in the init we have to pass the constant, sorry, in the init we have to pass the context. Okay, so I think now we should be able to receive the notifications. Let's see. Again, I'm going back to a Firebase console, sending test message, clicking our device ID and test. Okay, so again we are facing the issue because it is not able to call this method, and I think the reason is this home screen is not uh, initiated after the reloading, right? So we can, what we can do, we can stop the project and we can rerun the project, because once the project is rerun, the home screen will be loaded and it will load the this init state method, and once this method init state method is called, then we'll able to call the Firebase init method. So let's try this way. Okay, so let me first check our device token is not changed. So I'm again going back to the, let me remove this one, again adding an this device token and clicking on test. Let's see. Okay, so if you see that we have received the notification, right? Because initially what was happened, we call these functions from the init state, but the screen was not reinitiated. That is why we were not able to call this Firebase init method. Now when we restarted these applications, that these functions was invoked, and now if you see that we have received these notifications. As of now the data is empty because we are not setting any custom data from the Firebase console. For the test purpose, we are just sending the title and the body, and we have received that successfully. So now the next step is, still we are not receiving any notifications while app is running. So once we are confirmed that okay, we are receiving the messages, then what here we can do is we can set check for the whether app is running for the iOS or Android. So again we'll write that code, that if split form is iOS, first we'll check for the iOS. So is iOS, and if it is iOS, then we'll directly write the foreground message. Now the next check is if the platform is Android, right? Now we have to check whether it is for the Android or not. Then here we have to write the two logics, that first we have to initialize the local notification, and the next logic is we have to show the notification, because in the iOS we do not need to add this kind of particular logic for the iOS platform, but yes, for the Android we have to write some logic in order to show the notifications. So we'll create two functions. So let's start creating the two functions. So the first function is initializing the local notification. Okay, so we can write init local notifications, and this method will accept our context and the message that we received. So here it is a build context and the message that we receive. So what we received the remote notifications. So it is remote message, then message, again it is async functions. Now the next is we have to initialize the few variables, that is where it is Android initialization settings, right? So in this case we have to pass the launcher icon. If you remember, when you receive any notifications, that notification contains the app launcher icon or apps icon in the notifications header. So we have to initialize that first thing. So that is Android init settings is equals to constant Android initialization settings, and here we'll write at the rate mapmap slash ic launcher. Okay, so what here we are doing is we have to show the launcher icon when we receive the notifications, and for the Android initialization settings we are using the icon called ic launcher from the mapmap folder. So if you are Android developer, you probably may know that we have to add the launcher icons in the mipmap directory, and this mipmap directories are contains the different size of the images based on where these applications will run, whether it will run on the tablet or in small screen size device or the large screen size device. So if we go to our files and under the Android folder, under the app, then source, then main, resources, and here we have the mipmap IC launcher. So it will use this launcher icon to display the notifications, right? So we are doing nothing but we are using that image from the mipmap folder. So that is the one thing that we have done. The next thing is for the iOS notification we have to write something. So for iOS, init setting, then it is constant. For iOS there is a Darwin initialization settings class, and in this we do not have to pass anything because it will by default it will take that image. Now again we have to initialize one thing, that is init settings is equal to initialization settings, and this will contain a few parameters. The for the Android that we have already created, that is Android settings, and the next one is for the iOS that we create settings for the iOS, right? Okay, now again we have to initialize when we receive the Flutter notifications, and in this case we'll write the on receive notification response, and it will contain the payload, and then there we have to write some logic to handle these notifications. So till then what we have done, we have done the configuration or initialization settings for the Android as well as for the iOS, and we have passed their settings to the initialization settings, right? Now next is write await, then it is a Flutter local notification settings dot initialize, right? And in this settings we have to initialize these settings that we have created for the Android and iOS, right? And in that case we have to listen for one method, that is on did receive notification response. So we'll listen this one, and here it is a payload that we receive for that. Here we have to handle this notification. So we have to create this new functions called handle the message, and in this we are passing the context of our applications and the message that we have received, right? Okay, so again let me first format this code, and now the next is we have to write these functions called handle message. So what we have to do now is we have to create a new class, sorry, new functions called handle message. Now these handle message these functions can be used for the different purpose. Let's say when we receive the message for the particular type, and it message contains the data, that is payload, with the particular values, then you can take actions accordingly. So let me show how this can be done. Here we have to write a build context, that is context, and the remote message that we have received, and here we can write one check. So let's say your message that you have sent, its payload contains something like that. If the type is like text, right, then you can take actions accordingly. Let's say from here you want to redirect to a new screen, or here we want to take different actions based on the payload that you have received, right? So you can do that based on payload that you receive. but in this case we do not have any that kind of requirement. Simply what we can do is that in handle message, so we can add one statement that in handle message functions, or I can simply write this one. Okay, so our the first part is completed. So from the Android, what we can do, we can write this, and here we can pass context and the message, right? So if you remember, we are initializing when we receive the message. Till now we are receiving message only in the console. Then what we are doing, if the platform is iOS, then we are directly calling the foreground message functions that we have already defined there. And if the platform is Android, then here we are initializing the local notifications, and in that case we are adding two settings, one for Android, one for iOS settings, and on the basis of that we are handling the notifications that which we have received it. Now next is we have to show the notifications, right? So you can write the new functions that show notifications. Again we have to write these functions, and in this case we have received the message. So this would be a future functions. So future void, then show notification, and here we have a pass the remote message object there, so it is remote message and it is async, right? Now here we'll write actual logic to display notifications. So first we have in the Android we have to create the notification channel in order to receive or display a notification, because we have already received notifications but we are not displaying it. So first we'll create the new channel here, that is Android notification channel. Do we have that class here? Okay, we have Android notification channel, then Android notification channel, and closing it. Sorry, what we have to do is, yes, we have to pass the channel ID. So the message that we receive the message, then there is a notifications, and then Android, because we are writing for the Android, then there is a channel ID dot toString. After this I will share one thing that we need to add in the Android manifest file. Then next is again message, so we can copy this one because we have to write the similar thing here. Then importance, so the importance is a dot max, it's kind of priority. Then do we need to show badge, then yes, then should it play a sound, then it should be a yes. So for now we are just playing the sound and it will use the default sound here, right? Okay, now next thing is, again we have to create a new instance for the Android notification details. So that is Android notifications details, yes, the notification details is equal to Android notification details. Again I'm removing this and we'll write so that we can properly read it. So here we will write that is Android channel dot id dot toString, we are passing the instance from there. Then it is a channel dot name dot toString. Don't get confused because we are using this channel settings in the notification detail class. Then next is the channel description. So here you can write the Flutter notifications, whatever it can be a whatever name, but it should be appropriate name, right? Then again we have to write the importance. That importance is dot max. Then next is a priority. Priority is also a high. So these are the settings, and on the basis of that the notifications are displayed in your notification centers. Then play sound and ticker. So we can simply write the name of the ticker, and in the sound we can use what sound we want to play, that is notifications dot sound, right? Okay, so we are all good by creating the Android notification Android notifications detail class. Then the next part is creating the Darwin notifications. So the Darwin notification detail we have to create. So again we have to write something, that is the Darwin notification details, that is Darwin notifications, then Darwin notification details. And here again we have to pass some parameters, that is present alert, that we are passing true. Then present batch, again we are passing true, and then we are presenting the sound or not, so we are passing true. So see, these kind of configurations are required for both, because we are writing code for the iOS as well as for the Android, and that is why we have to write some code twice, one for the iOS, one for the Android. And these can be only one-time configurations or one-time implementations. And later on the basis of your logic, you can write your custom logic in the handle message, whether this data, your notification payload contains particular data or not. Now next we have to create a notification detail class. So notification details is equals to notification details. Now in this we have to pass the instance for the both iOS and iOS and Android that we have just created. So it is like first is Android notifications, that is Android notification detail, that will pass here, and then is iOS, so for the Darwin notification detail that we created it, right? Now one final implementation is that is a future delayed. So here we do not want any delay for the notifications, and for that reason we are writing this. So duration is 0, so no delay should be there while receiving the notification. And then what the final step is, the one, if you remember that initially we had initialized this class, that is a Flutter local notification plugin, that we have to use that initializations or instance here to show the notifications. And here it is asking for the 4 parameters. So for the ID you can pass 0. Then for the title that we are receiving from the message dot notifications dot don't forget to write exclamation mark here, then title dot toString, right? So this is for the title. Let me write it properly. Then again next is notifications dot body dot toString, and notification details that we have to pass. And if you remember, notification details contains the notification details for the Android as well as for the iOS. So I think we are all good. We have written our all the logic in order to receive notification for the Android as well as for the iOS. But I want to let you know that for the iOS, to send and to receive notification, some extra configurations are required, and that for the particularly for the iOS, I will create a new video to how to configure the certificates, and how to add those certificates from the how to export those certificates from the iOS a developer console to the Firebase. So I will create one more video on that. But till now we have done all the configurations for the Android, and we are ready to receive and ready to display the notification for the Android, because iOS part is very different from the Android. So in the part 5 I will explain you how to configure or how to implement iOS notification in Flutter, right? So in that video I will mainly focus on creating the certificates, registering the device in the Apple developer console, and how to export, as I mentioned, how to export the certificate from the developer console and that upload into the Firebase console. Okay, so yes, from we can say that now there is a no code changes are required for the Android and iOS, because we have done all our implementations in order to receive the notifications, right? I think we are missing the one part here, because if you see that we have set the priority here, uh, in the Android notification channel, right? Not the priority, it is a channel ID. So what we have to do is we have to write one settings in the Android. Go to your Android folder, then under the Android folder open the app, then open source, and then there we have the Android manifest.xml file. So here we have to add one manifest regarding the Firebase notifications, right? So what we can do here is write one new metadata. Okay, and under that metadata you can copy this, write com Android, sorry, com Google dot Firebase dot messaging, then write default underscore notification. Make sure that you are writing uh, properly and there is a no spelling mistake, otherwise this won't work. Then it is Android value. So Android value is high importance, high impo importance, high importance underscore channel. Okay, make sure that you add in the Android manifestation file, and then now we are ready to send our notification from the console. So let's try it. Before starting the testing, let me first stop the running applications and we'll restart, so it properly load all the our configurations and implementations, right? Okay, so if you see app is loaded successfully. Now let's go to Firebase console there, and again we are writing a test, and as the description is test from the Firebase console. Okay, click on send test message, selecting the device ID and clicking on test. Okay, so if you see that we managed to receive notifications, and then it is we have the notifications icon there with the title and the body, and we also got the what is we got the notifications for which applications, and in the console we have same data, as the notification title is test. And okay, by mistake I have written notification title, but it should be a descriptions that test from the Firebase console. So if I pull down the, so if I pull down the notification center, and there it also displayed in the notification center there, and I can use this to dismiss it. Okay, so uh, now we are successfully managed to receive the notification in the when app is in the foreground. But what if application is not running or application is in the background? So let's do over the last remaining part when the application is running in the background. So in this case what we can do is we can go to our main screen, that is the starting point of our applications, and then there we can write some logic. So this logic will handle notifications when application is not running or it is in the background, as well as it also handle the things like when user clicks on that notification, then it should be open, it should open the our applications or to the particular screen, right? Okay, so here what you can do, go to your main screen, and in the main screen first we have to write one future functions here. So it is future, and it is a void that is underscore, or you can write any, the Firebase messaging background handler, messaging background handler, right? And here accept the parameter as remote message, because we are receiving the remote message here, and it is async, right? And in this case, in await, we will initialize our Firebase int app. Okay, and it should be annotated at the rate, right, pragma, and it is a VM, that is entry point of our application, that is entry point. Again, make sure that you are writing correctly and you are not making any spelling mistakes, right? So again, what here we are doing, we are writing one handler, that is the messaging background handler, and in that case, in the background we are initializing the Firebase applications. Okay, so now we have to call this. So what here we can do is, when application is started, that is the main is the starting point of the applications, here we can write the Firebase messaging dot on background message. We are going to call this Firebase handler, right? And just close this or write semicolon. So again we will restart the applications. Okay, so friends, app is loaded now, and soon we can test the background notifications. Let's wait for the app get loaded. Okay, so see, application is loaded now, and if you remember that it is not asking again for the notification permissions, because we have already provided our consent to the applications that yes, we are ready to receive notifications. Okay, so let's now see, are we good to receive a notification when app is not running or it is terminated, right? So in this case, what I have done, I have closed the applications and now it is not running, only emulator is running there. So again, I'm going back to the Firebase console and clicking on the send notifications and selecting the device token there and clicking on test. Okay, so if you see that we have received the notifications, and we can see that notifications in the notification center. So guys, we have seen how we can implement the Firebase notifications and how we can send the notifications from the console to your device. So this implementation will also work for the iOS devices, but in the next video we'll see how to configure the Firebase for the iOS and how to export and import the certificate in order to send the notifications. So that's a wrap for today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and always make sure that the simplicity is the soul of efficiency, and keep your code always simple and readable. Goodbye.